What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. It is officially training camp week. We are 2 days away from players reporting to St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Cannot be more excited to watch some football. It's a beautiful day in the Berg. It's supposed to be like 95 all week for these guys on the field. How you feeling, my friend? How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. I was telling you before we got on, I actually, on Saturday night, I had someone come up to me while I was out in Lawrenceville, and, someone who watched the show and was like, "Oh, man, I watch your podcast every week. Love you." And it was really cool, actually. It was the first time that had ever happened to me that someone had, recognized me from the show. It was not something I thought would happen, but it was really cool. It's gratifying to meet people and know that they're actually people who appreciate what you're doing. Sometimes, I can see the numbers and, what YouTube tells us of people who watch the show. But yeah, to actually have someone come up to you and tell you they appreciate what you're doing, that was really cool.
That's awesome. That is awesome. We do. We love and appreciate everybody that comes up to us, and I always do. Please come say what's good, because it makes our day for real. That's exciting that it finally happened to you. Was very excited to hear that it finally happened to you. How many beers deep were you by the time that person came up and said what's good?
Honestly, not that many. Enough. Not enough. Too many to. I apologize. Too many to remember what their name was.
That's
but
right.
Not enough. But I remember that it happened, and I really appreciate
it.
Yeah,
it's still appreciated. Very, very appreciated. Much love to that person and to everybody who comes up to us all the time. It's happened a couple of times over the last week. I've said to you, I always look like I'm always leaving the gym or something, and then I'm like, oh man, I smell terrible right now. This is not the place to be.
This is their one impression.
Yeah. I wouldn't watch the show. I'd be like, that guy's gross. But it is so much love, so much appreciation. We love you guys. Let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. It is officially training camp week. I cannot tell you how excited I am to actually go to Latrobe. I packed my bag yesterday. I went shopping over the weekend. I felt like a kid, getting ready for the first day of school. I bought a bunch of pens. I bought some new notebooks, some little notebooks just in case, a phone charger. I'm stocked up, ready to go. I was packing the bag, laid out a couple of nice shirts for the week. Very excited to get there. There's two storylines that have popped up early. One surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers, one surrounding a former Pittsburgh Steelers as training camp approaches. We'll start with the former Steeler. Chase Claypool starts Chicago Bears training camp on the PUP list, physically unable to perform. We were kind of uncertain what the injury is at this point, but this follows a very rough summer for the former Steelers wide receiver. The guy at one point was reported that he wasn't self-motivated, and the Bears were worrisome about what was happening with Chase and his expectations for this season. Then the whole modeling thing happens. We do come back a little bit and say, oh, okay, well, he was out there to kind of teach flag football to some kids. But at the same time, he was putting more of a show on for the fact that he was a model or hanging out with models than he was playing football, coaching football, the whole nine. A week ago, 2 weeks ago or something like that, he puts out a thing slamming fans or haters that say he doesn't post any workout videos and that all he posts are other things, saying, why would I do that? And then boom, he pops up on the PUP list to start training camp. I mean, what are your thoughts? At this point with Chase Claypool, things are getting a little dangerous, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I see every Chase Claypool headline from over the summer, and I just think, wow, Omar Khan, this guy is elevating Omar Khan's, resume and reputation with just every passing day. And Omar Khan doesn't have to do anything. He traded him away, and now, I don't know, it's kind of because he just looks better and better by the day. But every time Chase Claypool pops up in the news, Omar Khan just looks like a better GM, and that trade looks even better than it did the day before.
Oh yeah. It's we're at the point where we're about to talk about Joey Porter Jr., but I mean, Joey Porter Jr. could hold out for a week of training camp, and we're still looking at it like, yeah, well, he's a rookie and he's fighting for a contract, and the situation isn't great, but it's not Chase Claypool. We're not looking at Chase Claypool. And that's the thing, is the Steelers think about a year ago, talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're talking about, oh, Chase Claypool's got to have a huge year. This is Deontay Johnson's year. and then Calvin Austin will be in the slot. And you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that's fine, I guess. Like, cool, good. Anthony Miller might make a splash. You never know. This year, you're looking Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. Oh, and George Pickens. Forgot about George Pickens. Excuse me. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, maybe. You know, there's like 8 or 9 guys that seemingly are fighting for a roster spot as a wide receiver. The upgrade that has come with replacing Chase Claypool is ridiculous. Like I could have never seen it coming. And that's a guy that I was a big Chase Claypool fan coming into the NFL. Like I heard good things. I did hear there was some attitude issues, but outside of that, like I heard nothing but positive remarks about what Chase Claypool could do, had the phenomenal rookie season. And then afterwards, it just seemingly seems like this guy is just, he knows who he is. He knows how good he is. That's it. And he's just like, all right, whatever. And I feel like you hear that in the NBA with guys a lot, but I think it's rare that you hear about that in the NFL. Chase Claypool seems like one of those guys in the NBA that like understands he's 6'5" and he could run a 4.3 and he's, you know, like he shouldn't be this athletic. Nobody should be this athletic, but he is. And because of that, I'll go make $1 million and I'll look good. And when it's all said and done, I'll just go be a model. That's what this strikes me as.
Yeah. I kind of had that same thought too. You know, I obviously can't know what's going on inside of Chase's head,
Yeah,
but
of course.
it just doesn't seem like he really likes football, quite honestly, which is fine. I mean, you don't have to, but you know, that's a red flag to other people. And it's, like I said, he doesn't have to love football, but it's not, I don't think it's really what he wants to do with his life. It was just something that he was really good at, and there was an avenue for him to make a lot of money doing it. And
Yes.
so he did that, and he might be kind of realizing that this is just not for me.
Yeah.
And so it seems like he'll ride it out as long as he can, but I don't think he'll be completely devastated, or would be completely devastated if his football career ended, you know, within the next year or something.
Yeah. And I think that's the, you know, dangerous path that he's heading towards, because at this point you're going to start on the PUP list, which, you know, injuries are injuries, you know, and I don't think that's a Chase Claypool thing, but it's like the last place you want to start right now. Like after this summer that he's had, you are walking into a situation where you need to prove yourself with 2 somewhat star wide receivers, 1 superstar wide receiver, and then Darnell Mooney, who's an emerging star, who are going to be in front of you, who the Bears are going to look at as building blocks to this offense. Meanwhile, you're entering a contract season. You have complete uncertainty about the future, and you already have negative reports, and you're going to start on the PUP list, which is the last thing that you want to happen. So I think the expectations for Chase Claypool right now are rough. I think there is a possibility that we see very limited Chase Claypool moving forward, which stinks. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, they won that trade. I think that's very obvious, unless Joey Porter Jr. turns into a complete bust. But even then, I think there's an argument to be said that, like, well, you know, you at least tried. You at least, you know, you gave it a good effort. Yeah. You took a swing instead of dealing with somebody who, I mean, when Chase Claypool left, there are all those reports that he was a cancer to the locker room, the whole nine. So, you know, sometimes that's still a win, even if it doesn't work out for the player. Talking about Joey Porter Jr., he remains unsigned. It is Monday morning as we're recording this. Still no contract. There are 9 rookies who have yet to sign a rookie deal. Believe only 3 of them ahead of Joey Porter Jr. who are yet to sign. We are 2 days from players reporting to training camp. I think the last time we talked about this, it was a no big deal situation. Have those thoughts changed for you now that we're coming down to the final hours?
I mean, yeah, a little bit. You know, like we were talking before we started recording, but rookie holdouts like used to be a thing. You know, not as much anymore, but Joey Porter's in this weird kind of limbo just because he was the 32nd pick, technically in the 2nd round. That just makes, you know, what he could demand and you know, but the technicality of where he was drafted changes what kind of guaranteed money he could get. Shout out to the Miami Dolphins for swinging and missing on Tom Brady and making this all complicated for everyone. But yeah, it's a little bit concerning. Because I also this is a guy who is a candidate to start. He's probably one of your top candidates to start at cornerback. That's just not, especially for a rookie, that's just not something you want to have hanging over your head as you get down to the wire and begin to think about training camp.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at this point it's becoming a, like, do I expect a holdout? Maybe not. but I'm much less confident right now than I was a week ago or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this, just because, and I said at the time, like, I think it could come right down to the wire and we still shouldn't expect a holdout. And I think that that could be true, but we are 48 hours away. Alex Highsmith got a deal. The Steelers have made moves. Like, they've been in the office, they've been working, things have been on the move. There's really at this point zero reason for Joey Porter Jr. not to be signed. Like, you look at the situation and it's got to be a disagreement on the number of guaranteed money. And that seems much more concerning right now than it did at the time, because at the time it was like, yeah, whatever, they'll find some middle ground. It is what it is. Now you're getting to a point where you're like, okay, why is the deal not done? Like, what is Joey Porter's number? What is he looking for? How stuck on that number is he? And how much are the Steelers saying, dude, you haven't played a snap of football, we're not budging? Like, where are these two sides when it comes to all that? Do I think a deal gets done? I mean, yes. Like, do I think a holdout's on the way? I think those chances are very slim, but I think that right now it's, the alarms, they're getting ready. Like, it's getting ready to flick on that alarm. And if Wednesday turns around and, like, we pull into Latrobe, into that parking lot, and there is still no deal done, I think that's when it's like, okay, maybe this is a concern. And I mean, at that point, like, what do you expect? Like, how much do the expectations of Joey Porter Jr. change if a holdout does happen?
Yeah, and I think the thing I'm stuck on is, like, how big a difference could it be
Yes.
between what Joey's asking for and what the team wants him to sign for, that, like, this is a problem. No side is willing. Like, I have to imagine it's a difference of, a few $1,000,000. It cannot be enough to,
Yeah.
in my mind, to, like, move the needle that much to make this a worthwhile thing to fight over well into July, and take this right down to the wire in training camp, and, like, just kind of risk this hanging over everyone's head. That seems a little silly to me for a guy that you have a lot of confidence in, that I get it. Technically, it wasn't the first round, but it was de facto a first round pick.
Yeah.
That's what everyone was treating it as during draft season. So it just seems a little weird to me why you would, if you're the Steelers, get so stuck on what I have to imagine is a drop in the bucket, compared to everything that you're going to spend over the next couple of years.
Yes, exactly. I agree 100%. I also understand that the Steelers are in a tough salary cap situation over the next couple of years. So, I get that as well. But I think that, like, just like you said, if it's a couple of $1,000,000, I think we should find some middle ground. And maybe Omar Khan gives in a little bit and just says, we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to draft Joey Porter Jr., which sounds weird. Like, it sounds weird to say, like, oh, we were lucky enough to draft you. It's like, no, you were lucky enough to get drafted, but Joey Porter Jr. should have been gone before the Steelers' 32nd pick. And they shouldn't have had the 32nd pick. They should have had the 33rd pick. And then you're even more worried about what the whoever had the 32nd pick, it would have been the Dolphins, but whoever bounced back, you know what I mean? Like, it just creates so much more, well, what if, that I agree with you. If it's a couple $1,000,000, you just give in and say, look, let's just clean slate. Let's head to training camp. Let's get this thing going. You don't want the fans upset with you. We don't want the fans upset with you. We want you to compete for a starting job. You want to compete for a starting job. Let's make this happen. And I think that that's where they need to be. Again, we're recording this. It's 9:30 in the morning on Monday. Maybe by Tuesday afternoon, things are fine. But every minute that passes, every hour that passes, I'm getting a little bit more nervous that the Steelers are in a tough spot when it comes to Joey Porter Jr. And I guess we'll see what happens. But that first day when everybody arrives, I'm sure he's going to be a hot topic of conversation, and I'm sure he'll be a name that everybody's looking to talk to. And I'm very interested about those answers. And that's the other thing. I don't want him to be in that situation. Like, I don't want to, as my job, have to go up and be like, why haven't you signed yet? I want it to be a positive conversation of, how excited are you about this? Like, do you think you have that opportunity? Is this, your first training camp? You've been here as a child. Like, how much different is it? How excited? You know what I mean? Like, let me talk about your dad for the 700th time before I have to talk about why you haven't signed a contract. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll see. But as the hours count down, like I said, it's the biggest story to monitor for the Pittsburgh Steelers, hands down, until that gets done, without question. All right, let's move on to training camp. Like I said, we are 2 days away from the arrival of training camp. Big stuff. I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning like I was rejuvenated. I went to bed early last night. I got up, my alarm went off, and I was up. I was like, let's go. It is training camp week. Football is officially back. It's like I'm getting like the tingle saying this. Like it's like, oh, we're ready. We are ready. You look at training camp, you look at a brand new roster almost on both sides of the ball, plenty of new faces. What's the biggest thing you are looking for as the Steelers take the field in Latrobe in 72 hours?
Well, I think it's something that we just talked about, and that's the secondary. Not just,
Mhm.
will Joey Porter, how his contract shakes out, but even when he steps on the field, what do he and Patrick Peterson and no Terrell Edmonds who replaces him, who figures into that slot corner spot, between Elijah Riley, Luke Barku, and another nameless Duke
Shannon
Dawson,
Duke
Chandon
Dawson, good old
Sullivan.
Shannon Sullivan. He is.
Yeah.
I talked about Elijah Riley this morning. I like Shannon Sullivan came out of my mouth, and I went, "Wow, forgot about that guy. Forgot
Yeah.
he existed."
Well, I mean, they're like 8 veteran defensive back, like 8,
Yes, yes,
veteran DBs that are fighting for, only a handful of spots. But that's part of why I'm really interested in it, because I feel like outside of maybe wide receiver, this is the position group on the Steelers with the biggest gap between its floor and its ceiling, I
yes.
think. Um, I'm if I was a betting man, I'd bet they get closer to their ceiling than their floor. But I mean, it's entirely possible that Patrick Peterson could be over the hill, and this is where he hits a decline. You know, wide range of outcomes, and I'm just really interested to see how it plays out on the field.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You look at the secondary. I think this is the biggest opportunity the Steelers have had since the Joe Hayden, Steve Nelson, Mike Hilton days of this could be an elite secondary, and it's been it's been a long time of trying before since the Steelers have, successfully built a secondary. And here they come. I have very high expectations for Levi Wallace. I think people are sleeping on Levi Wallace. I think he's going to be just a very reliable corner. He was the number one rated corner on deep balls last season. And I think that's huge for a guy who's not athletic. Like he's not known for his athleticism at all. So I have big expectations for Levi Wallace. You're right about Patrick Peterson. Don't know what's going to happen. I'm concerned that at some point corners fall off. Father Time catches everybody in the NFL. But at the same time, Patrick Peterson seems to be an enigma and has always kind of broken every mold that you've put out in front of him. And at 33 years old, like, I don't know if that changes. I think that maybe he just has one more really good year in him. And that's all. And I think the big thing about that is for those guys, for those older veterans, you win, you play better. Like for a guy like Patrick Peterson or Cam Hayward, like say this is a year where you see that Father Time got him. If your team's good and you're rolling and things are clicking, you somehow play better. Like the juices feel like they're flowing a little bit more. The injuries don't hurt as bad. Like there's just something about winning that gives you that extra spark. And for a guy like
Mhm.
Patrick Peterson, I think that could be huge. I also think that the fact that Joey Porter Jr., like you said, like if he steps in here and he's a starter and he's a day one contributor and a reliable corner on the outside, I think that takes so much pressure off of Patrick Peterson that you allow him to be everybody else. What's Keanu Neal going to play and how much is he going to play? What's DeMonte Casey going to look like as a starter? Like there's so many questions. And then is Elijah Riley like real? Is Luke Barku real? Like is Corey Trice good? Like there are a lot of questions, but a year ago we were talking about, like okay, like Levi Wallace, Akella Witherspoon, and Cam Sutton. That's really good, but that's about as average of a cornerback group as you could possibly have. This year, you're like, yeah, man, the upside of this could be really good. Like it could be. I think the floor is a very average cornerback group, but I think the ceiling's huge. And I think a year ago the ceiling was not that high, which is exciting. That's very exciting for a secondary that's been building. My biggest thing to watch is the defensive line. Like I am so ready for dominant Pittsburgh Steelers defensive football again. And they were good last year, but I think that this year the addition of Keanu Benton is significant in my eyes. Like, this is the first time since Javon Hargrave that they have had, and I guess Tyson Alualu, but he was getting hurt and he was getting up there in age, that they have had a nose tackle that you're like, this guy could be a stud. And that makes a huge difference. Cam Hayward, there's actual depth behind him. There are veterans in Braden Fajoko and Armand Watts. Larry Ogunjobi gets a full off season to practice and kind of like get in the groove of things. And then you got a newly signed Alex Highsmith, who, like, you know, you could talk, oh, well, he got paid. No, we were talking about this before we jumped on here. There's an opt-out year after one season of Alex Highsmith. Not this year, next year. After next year, the Steelers could opt out, lose very minimal money. All the guaranteed money's already been paid. It's over. They want out of Alex Highsmith. They want out of Alex Highsmith. I think Alex Highsmith is going to use that as motivation. I expect a big year from Alex Highsmith. TJ Watt's going to be a monster. But then you got Marcus Golden, and then you got Nick Herbig, and you know, you have actual depth. You have a real defensive line. Like, you have, it's been, again, a long, long time. Like, growing up for me, it was like Brett Kiesel and Aaron Smith and Casey Hampton. But then you had, you know, like Chris Hoke coming off the bench. You know what I mean? Like, are these guys like, you know, at one point, like Ziggy Hood, like made his way in there, or, you know, the James Harrison transition into TJ Watt. Like, there were those guys, you know, like there was like, it was just stud after stud after stud. I think this year is the first year in a while that the Steelers have that.
Yeah, definitely. There's a ton of depth there. There's a ton of talent too. Like, it's not just the top end talent, but it's guys beneath them that you think are capable, even if, you know, there's some injury concerns or anything like that. And I agree, like, just attitude wise, I think Andy Weidel talked about this maybe either before the draft or right after the draft, but they're going to look good getting off the bus. They're going to look intimidating. They're going to play in kind of a really traditional hard-nosed Steelers style, led by the defense, led by the defensive line, that I think a lot of fans can really identify with, and a lot of fans kind of grew up loving this team for. And that's going to be fun to watch at the very least. You know, you can really count on the defensive line, not just being good, but, you know, being nasty and being aggressive, and that'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yes, I agree. I think it's going to be exciting. And then there's the obvious ones like Kenny Pickett. Excited to see Kenny Pickett. You got expectations for Kenny Pickett? What are your expectations for Kenny Pickett at training camp?
My expectations for Kenny Pickett at training camp. That's a good question. You know, a step forward is way too vague, but like, you can't exactly put like a statistical. I don't know. I think he's gonna start. How do I put this into words? You know, making plays on his own. You know, like not. You know, I get a feeling that I will be more encouraged by Kenny Pickett if it's, you know, him throwing guys open, you know, or you know, him making plays with his legs. You know, kind of adding a little bit of magic to the game manager type of label that I think he had last year, even when he's playing his best football towards the end of the year. That on top of just like some consistency, like, you want him to look comfortable, I think, more than anything else. Last year, it was pretty clear he was kind of feeling things out. He was kind of reacting to what was thrown at him. You know, he's new to the NFL. That's to be expected. But, you know, second year, when he's kind of had the whole offseason to prepare like he is the starter and to, you know, take ownership of this team, I think he's going to look different, and I think he's going to look more comfortable, and I think you'd expect him to look, you know, better off of that and be able to make more plays kind of on his own merit, as opposed to taking things from the supporting cast.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Like, I think, like we talked about it, the narrative of Kenny Pickett is wild these days. He is the next Tom Brady. He's the greatest thing of all time. He's about to be an elite quarterback. This guy is a stud. And then this guy gets one opportunity. He's not really that good. His stat line stunk. How are you going to succeed in Matt Canada's offense? I think last year, Kenny Pickett showed exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking for. They hammered. 2-minute drill, red zone offense. Be very good in clutch situations. Be the best in clutch situations. If you could go win a game at the end of the game, you could win a game. That's all that they wanted him to do. This year, I think my expectations are for the Steelers to try to turn him into a complete quarterback. To just say, you will not lose games. You will be able to win games. You will be able to control an offense. You will be able to control a drive. You can make plays on your own. Just like you said, you could throw guys open. You are the focal point of the offense. And I get that. I think Najee Harris and the running game are going to be the focal point, but I think that Kenny Pickett is going to be able to be a true quarterback. My expectations are to just see how well he can do that, because last year the Steelers gave him very limited opportunities, and the opportunities that they gave him, he succeeded in, and then he went into the season and he used that. This year, they're going to want to build that, and I think that's where my expectations lie. Is right now they're going to try to turn Kenny Pickett into a true, complete quarterback in the NFL, and I'm just excited to see if he could do that, and if it works out, I think maybe he is like an elite quarterback.
Yeah. And like, especially in training camp, like I'm not worried about Najee knowing what holes to hit, or honestly, this offensive
Yes,
line
no,
knowing where to block. So especially in training camp, I think it would be fun to kind of put some more on Kenny's shoulders and test him out a little bit and throw him into the fire a little bit and see what he can do against. He's going to play against good competition every
single day.
right. Like he's going to face a good secondary. He's going to face a pretty elite pass rush. Like he's going to get tested, and I'm just excited to see him get tested. I think that is going to be good for him. It's going to be good for the Steelers.
Yes, agreed. You get iron sharpens iron. Kenny Pickett's not going to turn down. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. All right, last thing I want to talk about: veterans that you believe need to have a big training camp. There are a list of them. There are a number of guys. We talked about the secondary alone. There's like 5 or 6 defensive backs that have an opportunity to make this roster, but it's uncertain about which ones are going to. You look at the vets on this team. Which ones do you believe need to have a big camp in order to make the 53-man roster, or play like a significant role on this team?
That second qualifier there, because I think Kendrick Green is a guy that I'm watching, honestly.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I mean, yeah, like look, I we've talked about it a little bit. How long he's destined to stay in Pittsburgh, I think is a
Mm-hmm.
completely open question. I think if he can prove to be at least solid, capable as a backup, that completely changes the calculus. Because I also think, there's kind of two sides to this. There's the side of Kendrick Green plays well enough that he's a valuable backup and we need to hang on to him. And then I think the
Mm-hmm.
other side is he's playing well and he's a valuable backup. We got to trade him so we can, sell high on Kendrick Green and get something back from him. So that's someone I'm watching. You know, there's kind of like layers to it. There's okay, he's not good enough to play for. We're just kind of cut our losses on it. There's good enough to build some trade value for him. Keep him around. Like he, to a point where he's good enough that he's valuable enough to keep around. So that's what I'm watching. I know you're high on Connor Hayward this year, but I think that's another guy that I'm watching too. Only second year, so technically a
Mm-hmm.
veteran, but still very young. It's just a crowded tight ends room. And yeah, maybe he fits into that fullback role that some people like him in. The kind of Swiss Army knife can do a lot of different things, but I'm still not very bullish on that actually happening and that and him actually being used in that role. So I think it's kind of a big summer for Connor Hayward to prove what he can do and prove that there is a role for him in this offense and there is somewhere for him to fit in. It seems like an uphill battle, especially after they've drafted Darnell Washington, but you've got 3 guys ahead of him that are pretty good. At the very
Yeah.
least, you got Zach. Like at the very tail end of it, it's Zach Gentry, who is incredibly reliable and solid. If he's not extraordinary, but he
Yeah,
will
he
do
gets the
everything
job done.
right. So I just think it's an uphill battle for Connor Hayward, and I think he's one of those guys that it would be cool to see him make the roster. I think that would be. I think he's a good football player, and there's a role for him somewhere in the NFL. But I don't know. I'm not sure if it's with the Steelers right now.
So the Kendrick Green thing shocked me a little bit. Didn't see that one coming, but I agree with you. Like, I think he makes the roster? No. Do I think he's got like any real opportunity to make the roster? I think that's very slim. Do I think he could build some trade value and possibly be, a swap for a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick by the end of camp? Yeah, maybe, or maybe he's a practice squad guy that the Steelers feel very confident in to work his way back into the roster. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe he's a guy that they do want around. I like that. And I think Kendrick Green's very good at
Yeah.
football or at playing offensive line in the NFL? No, not necessarily. But you never know. You never know. Year three is a big year for most offensive linemen. So I will proceed with caution. I like that one. Connor Hayward's a good one as well, especially because the Swiss Army knife is good on paper. It's not always good in a real role. And the Steelers rarely utilize a fullback, rarely. And just like you said, they have a crowded tight end room. I think where Connor Hayward fits in the most is what Pat Freiermuth is already doing. And it's a question of like, you're not going to take Pat Freiermuth off the field for Connor Hayward. That's just, it doesn't make any sense. You could use him in a number of ways, but how much usage is he actually going to see is a big question, I think. And at the same time, like, again, like, can you prove to everybody that you deserve a spot on this team more than a Zach Gentry? You know what I mean? Can you be more reliable than a Zach Gentry? I think what gives him the upper hand is he's a very good special teamer. But again, like, you got to prove that at training camp. You got to hold strong and you got to be able to utilize yourself in the offense. So I like both of those a lot. My big veterans to watch. Keanu Neal is my first one. No idea what his role is going to be. Is he going to play safety? Is he going to play inside linebacker? How much of the field is he actually going to see? I think that Keanu Neal is a guy that could be like such a key piece to the Steelers defense and utilized in so many good ways. But I also think it's been a couple of years since Keanu Neal has been a dynamic piece to any defense and has held like a starter status, and you don't really know what's going to happen there. At the same time, like, I think DeMonte KZ was kind of in that role when he ended up in Pittsburgh and turned into a pretty good, valuable piece. But I think Keanu Neal is a scary looking dude. He could hit you as hard as any inside linebacker. He's got experience at both positions, and he's super athletic. So I think if you could utilize him well, what gives me hope is Terrell Austin is a defensive backs coach by heart. So this guy knows how to utilize these guys. And Minka Fitzpatrick has talked time and time again about how smart he is and how well he sees the defense from that safety role. So I think that utilizing Keanu Neal could be kind of easy for him and something that is very impressive and huge for the Pittsburgh Steelers. My second one is Larry Ogunjobi. There are talks about Aaron Donald. There are talks about I just went on the whole thing of, the group. What am I looking for? I'm looking for, I'm looking for the defensive line. Larry O is the make or break guy for that defensive line. I truly, truly believe that. I don't know what DeMarvin Leal is going to be in year 2. I have zero expectations for him, like literally zero expectations, because I have no idea where he plays. I have no idea how much stronger he got. I just don't know what to expect from DeMarvin Leal. Larry O's got a whole offseason. If he is a monster, like when Larry O is on, he is as good as it gets for a defensive end in the NFL. When he's off, he's as mediocre as it gets for a defensive end in the NFL. And I think that a whole training camp could be huge. I think that him and Cam could be huge. I just think that he is the piece that makes this defense elite or not elite. And just like when Stephon Tuitt was around, the defensive line was elite. And Larry O could be another Stephon Tuitt like player. He could have that same impact. I do have a third one for you. Allen Robinson. That is a guy for me that I am not totally convinced that Calvin Austin is not going to be a superstar right out of the gate. I think that Calvin Austin's a stud. I might be Calvin Austin's biggest supporter. Like, of the media, I think that I might be, just because I think that dude has everything that you need to be a successful NFL player today. And I think he plays both inside and outside so well. But I think Allen Robinson is looking for a bounce back year. He's had phenomenal years in the past. I don't think he's a 1,000-yard receiver, but I think that if you could be a 700-yard receiver with 5 to 7 touchdowns, that is a huge season. But that's where I think he shines. Like, I think Allen Robinson could be a guy that he's your big body. He is your unstoppable force in the red zone. The Steelers have not had that in a while. Maybe that's their guy, and I think that you get a glimpse of that in training camp, especially against guys like Patrick Peterson, Joey Porter Jr., Levi Wallace, Corey, like these big Keanu Neal, like these big guys that he's going to have to play every day in training camp.
Yeah. I love the Keanu Neal. I'm all in on Keanu Neal, quite honestly. Like, just personally, I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be really, really valuable, but like you said, he's got to be used right.
Yes.
Larry O is an interesting one. I like that, to kind of take that defensive line from really good to elite. Like, he could be a key piece there. I don't think I've been very high on Larry O in the past, but like you said, if things click for him, he's as good as it gets, and especially like pairing him alongside, if he can play alongside Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, and T.J. Watt, like that's going to leave a lot of single coverage for him, and it's going to, make life a lot easier on him, and it's going to set up a really favorable situation for him. So that's a
Yes.
good one to look forward to. And Allen Robinson, look, if he's your third receiver catching 700 yards and 5 touchdowns, the Steelers are in a fantastic spot. And Kenny Pickett has
Yes.
absolutely taken that leap that I think we might expect him to. Yeah, he could be a game changer too. Just I just you got to hope that Allen Robinson stays healthy, right? Like that's really
Yes.
the only concern. Like I feel like if he's on the field, he's going to be really good for them. But it's the staying on the field that you worry about.
Yeah, you got to be on the field. You got to be on the same page as Kenny Pickett. You got to be able to make plays quick. Like, yeah, I think that it's big, but I think that those think about this. Like I keep comparing it to a year ago, and I get that the Steelers last year, the expectations were like this is going to be a bad team. A year, like we just went through Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Neal, Connor Hayward, who some people have very high expectations for Connor Hayward, and Allen Robinson as like the guys that could like the vets who need a big training camp. Like last year it was like, Zach Gentry's got to have a huge day. Otherwise,
Right.
This offense isn't going to be good. Like it's where the Steelers have come in a whole year is just wild. And the additions and the upgrades that they've made have been so significant that it's exciting. And as we sign off, I got to say that it is ridiculous how good this episode felt, because for the first time in like 3 weeks, we didn't just sit here and be like, all right, let's talk about this headline that somebody said that
Right.
definitely stinks. It's like, oh man, football is back
Right.
in 72 hours. 72 hours. Think about that one. With that, we are heading out here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, and find us anywhere you get your podcast. Check out mine and Steven's work at allsteelers.com with plenty of content coming as we approach Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and all of our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday. Not sure if we're coming straight from Latrobe. It depends on how early I get there, but we will be back on Wednesday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.